CRPN Central. This is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe. It helps the mission more than you know so that I can do more for you. What time is it, everyone? It is TrialSide Chats time. I got to tell you, do this real quick. So do a quick Google search and search for something called Resident Evil Smooth Jazz. Yeah, it's a thing. So there's a YouTube channel or YouTube video specifically where they're playing like Resident Evil 2, 3, 4 music, only it's to smooth jazz. So if you like the smooth jazz genre, it's really quite a good listen. I think it's ironic that they're taking something from like a horror movie and they're turning it into something that's relaxing. So that's kind of what I like. But it's a favorite in the house right now, so it might be worth looking at. So welcome to TrialSide Chats, the place where we come together, talk about the industry, and hopefully learn from each other so that we can make everything just a little bit better. All right, so full disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, never said I was a lawyer. If you continue to watch this video, you've just accepted this disclaimer. Please take this at your own risk. Please listen at your own risk and make choices at your own risk. So if you don't agree with this, just turn the video off right now. No harm, no foul. Not worried at all. All right, so ground rules. We're going to talk about anything finance, specifically in clinical research. This is a very sensitive subject, must be confidential. We don't talk about names. We don't talk about organizations. We only talk about the concepts and the case studies so we can target best practices so that everyone can improve in this industry. Icebreaker. Okay, we are in an industry of documentation, right? If you do something, you document it. There's a rule that they always say, if you didn't write it down, everyone, if you didn't write it down, it never happened. That doesn't just start at ICF, everyone. So like everyone thinks that documentation has to start as compliantly as possible, starts at ICF, but it goes well before that. If we're in an industry that is dedicated to documentation, in fact, holding on to this documentation for years and years on end, why in the world wouldn't we write down our pre-screens? Every single effort to do a pre-screen, why don't we write it down? The answer is sometimes we do. But what's crazy is we do, and then we send it off to sponsors and CROs because they're asking for it, but then we don't copy our finance department. Why would you do a bunch of work, then give it to your client and not tell someone to bill for it? It doesn't make sense. So highly recommend, if your site is not currently writing down every single effort to pre-screen, that's chart reviews and phone calls, whatever it might be, document it. Document it just like it's your source. I mean, it's that detailed. If you did something, it needs to happen. You need to talk about it. And I know CRCs, it's going to be, well, they didn't qualify. So it's just a waste of my time to put effort into something where they didn't qualify. That's true. But do you want to work for free? Because you just did, unless you let finance teams know about it and have the documentation so the finance teams can bill for your time. It's super duper important. So anyway, let's talk about that at some time again. But sites, how do you tackle this? How do you tackle pre-screens? Because it is a pretty deep effort and you don't get paid unless you invoice. But then at the same time, you don't want to waste your time on potential trial participants that are not qualified. So like, what do you do? How do you document this? I would love to understand how you feel a best practices for this. All right, so we're going to talk about the book today. There's the book. It is on Amazon. If you want to buy it directly from CRPN, 10% off the book from us, and then we give you free shipping. So hopefully it's a win-win for everyone, and hopefully it helps. I also got an interesting comment saying, Dr. Fox, really, dude, let's talk here. Your TrialSide chats is so boring. White and black, really? What's going on with that? That was very intentional on so many different ways. Number one is I really hope that it's a symbol, right? What we are learning here right now should be as clear as black and white. Just, it should be right there. Very good, very transparent, very understandable. There's a symbol behind the color collection. But it's also another thing. We all know that AI overgenerates. That's just all there is to it. I guarantee you this is not AI because AI will not make it super simple like this unless you really, really direct the prompt appropriately. They want to do more than that. So two different intentions on that color scheme, but it's working. I mean, the point is, odds are you have me sitting here talking, you're not even going to be looking at the screen anyway. So I really appreciate the criticism, but it was very, very intentional with how we did it. All right. Publication alert. So this was through Cambridge University Press just a while back. Uh, thank you so much to Brad Hightower for collaborating with this. And as a very, very special note, tomorrow, 12 p.m., I will be on Note to File podcast. And my guess is Brad may be talking about this paper. Who knows what else we'll be talking about. But if you are interested in this topic, I would highly recommend, and if you have time, tune in to Note to File podcast tomorrow at noon, and we'll continue this conversation. We'll see what Brad has to say about it. All right, so this is the first installment of the next phase. So we have been spending the past 20 or so episodes talking about pre-study. Specifically in pre-study, it's everything that you have to do before you start managing a trial. This is all the pre stuff. So the negotiation was one of the biggest parts, but just understanding the industry, a lot of that. We are officially signed the contract. We have gone through, we are in trial management world now. Welcome to phase 2. Let's open up the chapter. It's so much easier than phase 1, right? No, actually, what's interesting about this is now that you've signed a contract, you have to make sure that that contract is managed, it's executed. And you'll find anyone out there who's experienced in it, they're going to find that it is not all bells and whistles. There's so many different things that can go wrong during this point in the cycle of a trial. But one thing that I should note is, I get it. Everyone is super duper busy. We talked about the pillars. You've got coordinators and ops people taking care of the patient, saying, this is my job, this is what I'm focusing on it. You've got the regulatory people saying, we're getting the IRB submitted, we'll make sure we're compliant. You've got the admin people who are saying, we're trying to get all the procurements. Everyone's got their own pillars. I say pillars because these are not silos. It is critical in your organization to understand how to create a culture of finance is everybody's job. That's something that I put together after auditing so many different sites and seeing the same exact thing over and over again. Finance is everybody's job. Pop quiz, everyone. So what exactly is finance? Anyone out there listening? Please feel free to comment. So I'll leave that out there, but finance is everybody's job. And that's the one thing that I want to ask everyone out there who's listening now or in the future to really, really nail in as we continue to go through study management. Finance is everybody's job. Say that until you believe it. All right, so the objective in trial management in this phase 2, now that we have the contract signed and we're supposed to be doing work and billing for that work and collecting it, there's 3 primary objectives that you really want to achieve. And we'll see how we do that across the entire section. So number 1 is, of course, it's all about promises. Let's just boil it down to what it is. We wrote a piece of paper and signed it legally that says that there are people who make promises to each other. One promises to pay money, the other promises to provide services. That's the end of the equation. That's what the objective of trial management is. So we want to make sure that all of the payments that we receive match the contractual obligations that we must give. That's it. Seems so simple, but it gets much more complex than that. We want to make sure that all the payments are on time, which is actually a subset of the contractual obligations. Time in the contract is generally specified. Within a certain amount of time, you have to pay your bill. And through contract management and aging, you need to do that. We need to figure out how everything is paid on time. And if it's not, why, and then how we fix it. And then the third primary objective in trial management is that the finances are always accountable to the services provided, which sounds very, very much like the first one, but you'd be surprised. So contractual obligations are one thing. Yes, we did this, we did that. Okay, service equals money. Bam. But finances are always accountable. That means that it's not just about the money. It's just not just about the values. It's about the provisions. It's about how the provisions are defined. It's about how they're executed. All of that put together makes for a very big and challenging work in trial management. It's kind of fun, but then at the same time, you're still in this situation where you feel like you're doing things right and the other party is not necessarily holding up their end of the bargain. So you feel frustration, you don't feel listened to. There's a lot of back and forth. So it takes some balance on how to do it properly and how to respect everyone in the industry that you're working with. Now, there's some downfalls to this. So trial management is often overlooked. It's, oh, yeah, this is anyone can do it, which is why over in CRO world, most of the time, the people in trial management are the starters in the industry. Most of the time, they don't even know what they're looking at. And you have to explain a lot of things to them. It's not a priority. Oh, we'll just do the work and we'll just bill later. No big deal. Um, Very, very often it's treated like a burden without value, especially if you're trying to create a communication plan with operations people so that you get information from finance. I have been told that finance teams, stop bugging us, stop making us do all this work, and stop holding us back from taking care of patients. Or, you know what? This literally just someone can run QuickBooks. We don't have to pay someone to do this. They can just, it'll be their side gig and they'll get the invoices out and we'll be good. The story of my audits, my friends, that is how it starts. It starts when finance is not prioritized. It's not everybody's job, but then ironically, it's nobody's job. And so things fall through the cracks, things don't get archived, it doesn't become a priority. And as a result, it gets sensitive and prone to negative consequences. So it's just a rolling downhill battle when you don't prioritize it, when you just say, oh, it's just my side gig. I'll do it when I'm not busy. Those are the things that doom a site. And, if you ever run into that, give us a call because odds are you're probably due for a financial monitoring visit. So CRPN, we audit a lot of sites, and this is generally what happens. This is what happens to their financial management, and then all of a sudden, they're saying we've done all this work and we're not paid, and we know there's money somewhere, but we don't know what's going on. So, if you run into that, give us a call and we can help. The other thing is, and this goes back to everyone thinks that this is like a newbie job. This is something that people start out with. They don't need a skill. They can put something together, and then they just kind of let it run, and then they let it run wrong. And the longer you let it run wrong, the more endangered your site is to not getting paid at all for certain things. So, highly, highly recommend we take trial management seriously. A couple of things that we'll be going over, and in case you didn't notice, this is like an intro to trial management video. We'll be going into most of these in depth, one episode at a time, especially we want to go into much more detail. But you're going to learn accounts receivable, AR. And again, I'm not the accountant. I can talk to you about AR in a clinical research dynamic, but this is not going to be, if you're a CPA and you're expecting me to talk like a CPA, I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint you. But AR and accrual, so it's essentially the money that you've earned. So you've done work, you've earned money, but you haven't been paid yet. That's your accrual. You are accruing value through your services. Invoice and auto pay. That's pretty specific to clinical research. There's a lot of auto pay where you don't have to invoice, but then there's things that you do have to invoice. They're just versions of accrual. We're going to talk about deposits and cash, and the cash and the banking and the deposits. We're going to talk about remittances, which, by the way, are not deposits. Everyone, those are two different things that we'll be talking about. We'll talk about adjustments, talk about aging, and talk about dispute. A lot of these are pretty self-describing, but if you have any questions about these and these terms, let me know. All right, so what is finance again? Everyone, finance is everybody's job. So every part of the three pillars in clinical research are not isolated. They are cross-talking, they're talking with each other. In fact, this should be more of a pyramid than anything because reg and ops talk as well. I think there's another graphic for that if you have the book. But on page 117, you see just an example of the crosstalk between all the different pillars. So we know operations, the patient people, they are going to be doing patient services and they're going to be recording, hopefully in a CTMS. One way or the other, they're going to communicate, hey, this is a mistake on my PowerPoint slide, but also this is what we've done. So we had a patient, they screen failed, they did this visit, they did that visit, we did an x-ray, we had labs performed, we have this patient stipend that we had to give them, performance costs. They're going to be recording the accrual of the trial based off of the patients. We'll go back over to the reg. Reg, guess what? They're going to be recording accrual too, but it's not going to have to do with patients. It has to do what they do on a regulatory compliance level. Did we do amendments? Do we have IND safety reports? Did we have protocol reconsent? Importantly, hey, we've got a monitoring visit coming. Hey, the CRA just called. They want a closeout visit. The regulatory side is probably your most powerful department in the entire site. And it is really important to have that very, very connected crosstalk between your reg team and your admin team, because the reg team is going to let you know what the sponsor and CRO are wanting to do on a compliant level. And finally, the admin side. Of course, they're going to be receiving all this information, whether it be accrual to track auto payments or invoices. They're going to be receiving remittances and then matching them to bank deposits. They're going to have outstanding payments and work aging. They're going to escalate. So back to the regs, they're going to escalate. Either, hey, we can't schedule any kind of a monitoring visit because things are late and the sponsor owes us $500,000, or over to the ops side where they're like, hey, hold off on this enrollment because we're not getting paid, or hey, hold off on this enrollment because you're not going to get paid because it's a screen fail that is not in the contract. So the admin is kind of like the dispatch on finance. On the other side, both front and back, after the trial, they're going to do cost assessments to make sure that everything is within and affordable and they paid the bills, and they're going to start negotiating. So that cost assessment is also going to feed fair market value in the beginning. So it's really, really important. Even in trial management, you're still looking at all the different levels of the trial as far as the cycle goes. What is finance again? Everyone? No one? Yeah. Finance is everybody's job. So it doesn't matter what pillar you're in, you're going to have to try to figure out how you can contribute to the financial ecosystem of your trials and of your site. Even, every time you do something, you have to think to yourself, how is this going to help finance? And that make you greedy? No. What if the finance people come up to you and say, you know what? We have like 2 weeks left for payroll, so this is the last paycheck we can afford. Would you come back if they couldn't give you a paycheck? Is that greedy? No. It is absolutely critical for every staff member to understand that what they do and what they contribute into a financial ecosystem sustains the site. Everyone has to work together. You all have to work together to report that stuff, learn how to tell your finance team, get that money flowing from the trials that you've earned revenue on. You don't leave money on the table. You can't afford to leave money on the table. So please, 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 finance is everybody's job. I have a t-shirt. If you ever want the t-shirt, we'll talk. So it's really, really important. All right. So one thing to notice is the negotiations. The negotiations have only begun. You thought that you signed the contract and you're done negotiating. You are mistaken, my friend. So everyone reads a contract in a different way. Odds are you're never, ever going to talk to that person that you negotiated ever again. They sign the contract and hand it off to another team. There's times where you're never going to talk to the same payment processor ever again, unless you have like a project manager or a trial manager you're working with. So it's very, very possible. And I have seen it. Those negotiators will tell you things. Oh yeah, we'll go ahead and do this. Oh yeah, don't worry about that. We'll add this in here, add that in there. And then it goes over to a brand new team and all the words that were promised to you are out the window, because the people who are making you those promises are not the people who are executing those promises. Perfect example, archiving. Why is archiving interpretable? So, archiving, the very, very first time you save a file in your computer system, or you have to put a file in a binder, whatever it is, you have just started the archiving process. And so there are sponsors that will pay for archiving at CTA execution when archiving begins. But there's this really weird unspoken rule that nobody ever talks about. And you're only going to know once you start the trial and once they've read the invoices, where the invoice is already going to be late, and then they'll come back and dispute it, and they say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Archiving is paid at closeout. Archiving is paid at closeout. Boom! Show me in the contract. Doesn't matter. Archiving is paid at closeout. That was not part of the promise. So they're even in that situation, they don't know how the negotiation went. Maybe you agreed to a lower archiving rate as long as it was payable at CTA execution, but they interpreted it that way. And now you have to make a choice, sites. Are you going to deal with that interpretation? Are you going to approve it? Are you going to work with them? What is that? What's that going to look like for you? It's really, really important to know that the fight has just begun when it comes to this trial management, because the people on the other side that are interpreting that contract may be interpreting it in a way that the negotiator did not intend, and that, or you were having the conversations. It gets very, very hairy, very, very hairy. But just know that it's okay. It's to be expected. You're going to have people interpret things in ways that were never intended, but you have to be confident to dispute. If you know, and let's say you have the documentation. Perfect example. We had a sponsor who insisted on weekly booster calls. It's because the CRA was getting paid by the sponsor to do weekly booster calls. And so you have to, as part of being in the trial, you have to do a weekly booster call. And I said, actually, we don't. And here's the documentation from the negotiation that said that that wasn't necessary. They rejected that during the negotiation. So the sponsor denied our request for these booster calls. Therefore, it's out of scope, and we are not required to do it. Just took a couple pushbacks. I was confident in it. I had the documentation, and guess what? They're like, well, we talked to our team. It can just be an email. That's okay. One push, and all of a sudden we saved hours of time for our site, hours of unpaid time. That's the other thing that you have to really watch for. So put your negotiation hat back on, my trial management friends. The journey is not over. Which leads us to out of scope. Hey, I went to that, the booster call. The CRA called, hey, you have to do these booster calls. No, I'm sorry, that's out of scope. Show me in the contract where that's paid. If it's not in the contract, we are not required to do it according to contract. So you have to be ready to decline services. I guarantee you, CRAs, they have no idea what sites are getting paid for versus their requests. That's not in their job. They're left out of that loop most of the time. Their job is to focus on the reg, and so they just come in, they ask for things. And it's kind of like a physician who, they try to do their job, they're prescribing all these things, and they don't realize that insurance isn't going to pay for it. It's the same exact dynamic. It's not the physician's job to look at insurance and prescribe according to insurance. It's the physician's job to look at the patient and care for the patient, regardless of what the cost is. Same thing as a CRA. So it's really important for sites to keep the CRAs in check on out of scope activities, because the CRA is just going to keep asking. And the more they ask, the more the sites do, the more the expectations happen to do things for free. And we're just in this massive downward spiral that is not sustainable. So be ready to decline in a very polite way. Be ready to stick to your contracts, and you will get approvals for amendments if it's super important, or they'll drop it. So really, really important to do that is to communicate with your internal teams. Most CRAs, they're going to contact the PI or the CRC to do things. PI and CRC may not know what is billable. So, make sure that your CRCs continuously ping your finance departments to know what you are paid to do and what you're not getting paid to do, and then do the free work very sparingly at discretion. Final, and this is that regulatory team to administrative team, super duper important. Act like a streaming service. Anything that you log into, if you try to log in and your subscription is out or you haven't paid your bill, if you got a late bill, guess what you're going to get? I'm sorry. Please update your subscription. Please update your credit card number. Please pay us before we provide a service to you. In other words, sites, you need to do the same thing. It can't be nearly as sophisticated yet than some streaming services or things like that. But sometimes it's just a simple conversation. If a reg team comes up and says, "Hey, the sponsor's trying to close out. How are we doing on their bills?" And the finance team says, "Actually, they owe us 6 figures and they haven't paid in 6 months, and they're like 4 months late." Maybe it's not a good idea to schedule that closeout. It might be a better idea to contact the CRA, let them know, "Hey, you're way overdue. I'm sorry, we're going to have to delay this until you're current on your bill." Just say that. Current on your bill. Repeat after me. We need to make sure that you are current on your bill, because then they know, "Oh crap, we haven't paid our bill. I guess we're really going to have to do that before we close out." Same thing with monitoring visits. Same thing with any form of access or request of services without pay, or without pay, like unpaid work, or without pay, like it's so old that something's wrong. That has to be a priority. Back to the paycheck, right? Nobody here can afford to work without a paycheck, and no site can afford to continuously work without resources. It's not greedy, it's just how businesses run. So, what is finance again? Anyone? Everyone? Finance is, I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully, I would love to see a bunch of comments on this video that tell me exactly what finance is. And so we'll see what happens with that. You're going to hear that a lot, by the way. Finance is ? Go for it. All right. So next week, we're going to do the deep dive. This was just the intro, accrual time. So we're going to talk about earning those services and communicating those services with your finance team so that you can optimize your revenue and cash flow. 20th anniversary, booth 920. Come see us at SCRS. That's the Society for Clinical Research Sites. 20 years. I wonder what's changed in 20 years. I mean, it's a bigger venue, and we're talking about AI now, but wonder what problems are the same, and I wonder what problems are different. We'll see. I've got a big surprise at booth 920, everyone. So I just got the prototype today. Looks awesome. Come by booth 920, get your free negotiation swag, and we'll have a little conversation. So added the links, took 22 episodes, but I finally got it, and I checked the QR code. So if you have this on a TV, you can snap the QR code and go to these sections. But importantly, this is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe, share your voice. See you next time.